second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the 81 All Out podcast. I am Ashoka, ABVan on Twitter. And in this episode, we look at the recently concluded India-West Indies Test Series. First, let me say hello to the two regulars joining me today. First is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan. He is at Sidvi on Twitter. Hello, Sid.
Hey, Ashoka. Good to be here, man.
And the second person is Mahesh Sethuraman at Cornered on Twitter. Hey, Mahesh.
Hey, Ashoka.
So, guys, the series is over. West Indies have been sulked badly. So, what are your initial impressions of this series?
I think, first of all, we should appreciate that this is a big achievement. I mean, many people, may think that beating West Indies in West Indies is no big deal, especially if they have not been following cricket in the way the West Indies team has been shaping up over the last 2 years. But I think beating this team in their conditions, a team that beat England pretty comprehensively in 2 tests. I mean, they lost the third one, but they won the series, I would say, in a pretty convincing manner. And they've also been really shaping up well in the last 2 years. And to beat them like this in such a fashion is a big achievement. Also, I think we need to take a little broader view and appreciate the fact that India haven't lost a series in West Indies since 2002. In fact, they've won every time they've gone there since then, which is a big deal because in the same time period, England have lost series. They lost in 2009. They lost recently. They probably just won once in that whole period. And, barring Australia, I think this is a pretty serious achievement. So even though it was a 2-test series and, played late at night when probably not many people were watching, I think this achievement needs to, be played up a lot more than it has been.
Mahesh, what were your thoughts? You also predicted 1-1, right? In our preview.
Yeah, I'm absolutely blown off by the performance of Indian bowlers, particularly Bumrah. In the preview, we spoke a lot about the impact of Duke's ball. And we focused, at least I kind of was focusing more on how it laid the West Indies bowlers and how it had aided them in the last 3 series against Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and England at home. But what I kind of didn't factor in enough was the fact that this is the first time Indian bowlers are bowling with the slightly modified Duke's ball. Although they've played in England, this is a slightly different ball, which is kind of tweaked to suit the conditions. I didn't expect the Indian bowlers to exploit it so beautifully. And although West Indies batting was always going to be vulnerable, but I didn't expect them to run through it so easily. So we outbatted them against, of course, Shannon Gabriel was not really bowling particularly well. But even when Kemar Roach and Holder were bowling well, we outbatted them comfortably. And in our bowling turn, the Indian bowlers were just super, super, super impressive.
What did you think of the pitches to start with compared to this series and the England series that we saw? Do you think that the pitches that were used for these two tests were spiced up, or what were your impressions about those?
The England test at Antigua, that was quite a spiteful pitch, I thought. And compared to that, this was nowhere as close to being that difficult for batting. And I was a little surprised, actually. I thought that West Indies would prepare pitches similar to the England series. Of course, you can only do so much with pitches. It's all a lot dependent on the weather and so many other factors. But I thought they would at least want to have these quick matches because, their bowling is their strong suit. And you would want, to have a low-scoring game to give yourself the best chance to win. The moment you have India scoring 400 plus, and with this Indian bowling attack, you would automatically back India to win the game. So, I was a bit surprised with Antigua. Jamaica, I think, I was better for them. But at the same time, I think India batted really well, and so that also played a big part in it.
They were not that easy to bat on. Also, there was enough in the pitch for both the sets of bowlers to exploit. I think Holder was badly let down by Gabriel. Shannon Gabriel not being sharp enough let him down, especially in the second test when he chose to bowl. And he went with one less fast bowler and one extra spinner. I mean, you could question the decision anyway. But still, I mean, if Shannon Gabriel had played his part, uh, of course, there's a little bit of an ankle niggle and all that. So I'm not saying that he didn't try hard enough. What I'm saying is that he was a little under par in both the tests, and that kind of accentuated the situations West Indies found themselves in. More than the wickets, I would say. There was enough in the wickets for them to exploit. And like in the good spells that Kemar Roach bowled, or, the way Jason Holder bowled in the second test, particularly, where he did a phenomenal job of both holding one end up without, giving runs, at the same time also attacking occasionally to go for the wickets. That was a really terrific spell. And Roach had his moments throughout the series, but it was just not consistent enough, probably because they didn't have backup beyond these two.
Yeah, I mean, in the England series, it was a perfect combination for them because Gabriel is like that thoroughbred who just runs in and can dig it in short. He had phenomenal stamina in that series, ran in long spells. And then Roach comes in for these brief bursts, mixes it up, terrific, bowler against of all lengths. And he can surprise you in all ways. And then you have Holder who's just constantly pegging away that back of a length outside off, getting that sort of uncomfortable bounce because of his height. And it worked out perfectly. I mean, England were blown away in both those tests. But
not to forget Alzari Joseph, no? So they had their fourth
exactly. Alzari came in, I think, in Antigua. And that was even more potent because then he brings you that added dimension. He is another tall bowler, pace, and can actually give the other bowlers a bit of rest with his bowling. So they had a perfect combination. This time Alzari was injured, and Gabriel, for various reasons, couldn't really put in the kind of performance he did. And Holder was amazing. Holder was still amazing, and Roach was very, very good. But I think that little bit of a release of pressure because of Gabriel and because of Alzari's absence, India sort of snuck in through that.
And as such, Jason Holder doesn't come across as someone who's very sharp on the field. I mean, I'm not going to kind of overread the importance of captaincy and on-field decisions here, but I mean, they matter, and they matter especially when he makes some really bizarre decisions. For instance, he was bowling the spinners at the start of the day for an extended spell so that he could give the new ball to the seamers when he should be attacking with his mainstream bowler straight away. Those kind of choices were a little weird, and Holder had quite a few weird choices. We'll probably talk about it as we go along.
And speaking of Holder's weird choices, I mean, toss. Both tests, he won the toss and he put India to bat. I kind of felt it was slightly weird because their whole strength was bowling and their weakness was batting. Then why put your weakness to a potential fourth innings chase? So might as well put your strength in the fourth innings, right? So might as well take the batting thing and make 150 and try to get as many wickets as possible, Indian wickets as possible within that total. Try to restrict India's batsmen. He let India put a total on the board and then put pressure on the batsmen by asking them to, even 250 was becoming a challenge for them.
But it's a little tricky in the sense that that imagine you bat first and you're all out for 150. Even if you're bowling well, the team batting second is already on top, and they have that extra liberty to kind of go for the shots. And sometimes a little bit of luck can kind of change things very fast. I mean, it's a little tricky thing, but largely I agree with you that going for winning the toss and bowling in both the matches was a little surprising. But it's more like I think he went all in thinking this is our best bet. I mean, if we can get 5 wickets in a session, that could set the tone for us. I mean, when you have such sort of distortion in the strength of your resources between bowling and batting, and when you know that there is a definite gap between the skill level of the teams, then your best hope is to capitalize on your strength in a couple of good sessions. So I think he just went all in, is my sense.
I'm borderline on this one. I mean, I think Antigua, I think in the past there was a mention on TV as well that in the past West Indies have tended to, in the last 5-6 years, tended to field first there at that stadium. So, maybe that played a part. Their bowling is their sort of strength. They bowled first against England too in that match. So they probably sort of overestimated the pitch. But I wouldn't really go too hard on him for that. I mean, these decisions people take for multiple reasons. So I think the more the more critical factor for them is the way they bowled and the way they batted. That was that was the reason they lost that match.
Okay, so let us move to the batting itself, like Indian batting in specific. I'm going to skip over that. This is a quiet series for Kohli. Let's cut the guy some slack. He's had one quiet series. But let's talk about the opening, or KL Rahul. What's the scene with him, Macha? I don't understand. He seems like a guy who has figured out his stuff in the limited overs, but tests, I don't know what's wrong, or I'm not qualified enough to say it's a technical difficulty or what it is, but he looks quite shaky. Even Mayank was lucky, but sure, this is bowlers were. I mean, in that way, Vihari was also lucky, and he edged a few. Few went through the slips, few were dropped, but that is something that you can take. You're okay with, but KL Rahul looks very unconvincing.
Funnily, I thought the first innings that he played in Antigua was probably one of his more controlled or more organized innings in the recent times. That includes the Oval 100 as well, where I thought he was just throwing his bat around initially and he got some touch and he scored runs. It wasn't a very convincing innings for me. I thought he looked quite organized in the first innings, in the first test. But eventually that kind of didn't quite materialize that way, in the sense that eventually that indecision came back to haunt him in many ways. And this indecision has been the story of his second half of his career, so to say. And it's not just the failures, right? Even before the failures, even some of his late success had this problem of him trying to play. At some level, I feel like he's lost the rhythm of Test match batting, which he had at the beginning of his career. Because I mean, see, unlike some of the other players, for instance, let's say Kane Williamson, to some extent Kohli, but Kohli had to really work on his T20 game as well. But he worked on it in such sort of incremental fashion that he didn't disrupt his Test batting too much. But I don't think KL Rahul started off as this natural T20 batsman, and he ended up tweaking so much of his game to succeed at that, and he's not able to mentally make that adjustment back to playing the Test match rhythm. And in fact, he admitted as much in one of the interviews that he did. Was it before the Australia series or after the Australia series? I'm not sure. And in the Australia series, for instance, there was an innings that he plays. I think it was a 40 odd in Adelaide, if I'm not wrong. There was a very good sort of summation of his second half of his career where this indecision is pulled his career back. So although he scored 40 runs, and if you watch the highlights package, it might seem like a fluent innings, but he was literally going for shots. He was just saying that I don't care what context, what format it is, I'm just going to go for my shots and hope it works. That is not how you kind of set yourself for a long career. So in a way, I was happy with the way he started in Antigua, but again, it kind of tapered off. So if he happens to miss out from here on, it'll be both fair and a bit sorry for him. But I hope he can rediscover his touch by playing a little more first-class cricket. It's not even a question of touch and technique. It's really about getting the rhythm, I think.
Yeah, from below par, let's go to above par. Rahane, what did we jinx the jinx himself? Like we were very critical in our preview about Rahane, and he came and smashed some runs.
We
So
weren't
what's
critical,
up?
I thought. I mean, we were just a little. I mean, we were puzzled by the fact that he's had this extended lean patch, which is not necessarily either terrible form or someone like KL Rahul who's not able to quite find the rhythm. With Rahane, he always found the rhythm, but he couldn't quite sustain. I mean, he played a couple of really, I mean, I would say terrific innings in England. He played fine innings in Perth in Australia, and I think one more innings as well. So he's been playing those very good Test innings that he's always played, except that he's somehow lost that sort of consistency that he's always had. He had for the longest time in his career. And actually, Manjrekar, I think, was the one who pointed it out that that at the beginning of his innings, he was trying to dominate a little too much, and which is not the way he was playing earlier. And of course, Manjrekar pointed this out when he was playing in England. But in many ways, that seems to have been the fix now, where he took his time to get in and then. But he's always been a counter-attacking batsman. While he may not be a great limited overs batsman, but in the longer format, in Ranji Trophy, in Test cricket, he's always been a counter-attacking Test batsman. So in the sense, it's not about his strike rate, but it's just about him settling down and getting that confidence before going for his shots. And once he does that, the shots just flourish him. So I was really happy to see him have a good series, and I hope this sets him up. The only worry I have right now is that typically he tends to do badly at home, and I don't want him
Yeah,
to rediscover his touch and then have this run of home series and kind of lose it again.
yeah. He has this weird problem of underperforming at home. Uh, Another batsman who did well was Vihari. So nearly 300 runs, right, in two tests. So he is kind of putting down like a strong marker for the number six spot. With let's say Rohit in the mix uh, and Hardik to come by. Home series, do you think they will go with six batsmen or they will stick to five? But let's talk about Vihari first. I mean, I think he had a fantastic series. Uh, Maybe the West Indies bowlers could have tried the short ball tactic a little more, but that is, I mean, that's not Vihari's fault or anything. I mean, he got the chance and he made it count, right?
Yeah, and one thing that we should mention is that for Rahane and Vihari, I think that it was really beneficial that they were already in West Indies playing for India A. And so there was, I mean, they were playing different opposition, but I think that fact that they were acclimating to the conditions and, uh, being there for a while, it seemed like they had that practice games under their belt before they came in. But yeah, Vihari for me was the most impressive batsman in this series. I mean, there's something so organized about him, and he plays in that unflustered way that it's really heartening, especially when the tail can give him support. It becomes very, very frustrating for the bowlers because you have a guy who's really not trying to score really fast, even though the tail is with him. You have Ishant Sharma, who is like hanging on, and you just slowly drag the lead and and tire out the bowlers. It's a huge advantage to have. And yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised with the short ball not being tried as much, especially with Bihari in England and Australia. He's been peppered quite a bit. But maybe the West Indian bowlers were hoping that they would get that edge from that length they bowl, and they thought they could frustrate him out. But the good thing is they could not, because he's the kind of batsman who you cannot frustrate out. There's some batsmen who spend 15 scoreless deliveries, and then the 16th one they want to hit for four. But this guy is like solid. He's patient. He's willing to play 10 more dot balls, even if it means going scoreless, and then he will get that, score. So he's a great asset, I think, at number 6. I mean, often when you think of number 6s, you think of batsmen who can come in and make that quick score. But I think, as Lakshman showed at the end of his career, and, it's also really valuable to have a number 6 who can play that really steady hand.
So the 6th batsman slot, he's already sealed it. It's not a question of Rohit or him. The question only is about whether Kohli is going to play Hardik as an all-rounder or a 6th batsman.
One thing we must mention that Vihari's effectiveness and all number 6's effectiveness is also a function of how good the rest of the lineup can support them. So the fact that, Pant and, Pant a couple of times, and then Jadeja, Ishant, all of them could hang around and also score, helped Vihari a great deal. I mean, otherwise, the number 6 then has to change his game, which we don't know how Vihari will react to that. So I think Jadeja, Kohli says he gives him control and he has spoken a lot about his value as a spinner, which is all justified. But I think Jadeja is also really vital in that batting order below to stretch that score with that extra 100 runs. He and Ishant and everyone else can then support Vihari and do that.
I kind of agree with Jadeja's batting at least. I mean, the guy has been really good in Test cricket. Batting wise, the last 2-3 series, and he's come up, and it is going to be an interesting thing to look out for. And we didn't have such a wealth of options before. Jadeja would never have been dropped in the 90s. I think he would have played like 150, 200 based on his fitness, how much ever tests he wants. But yeah, it will be an interesting thing to see. Let's go to the interest. Even more interesting part of this whole series. The guys who did not play, Rohit and Ashwin. Let's start with Ashwin. That I think that was far more surprising. Ashwin dropped for both the tests in favor of Jadeja, and many reasons were given. But what are your impressions? That is something that I would like to know. Mahesh, start off.
To be very objective, it's a marginal choice between Jadeja and Ashwin, right? They are both terrific spinners. I think Ashwin is the better spinner. They're both very, very handy batsmen, and on current form, I think Jadeja is a better bat. So you could make a call on either sort of players and be okay with it, and have question marks raised on the other choice. But the only problem I had was that there's this mainstream perception of Ashwin's poor away record gaining a lot of momentum, which is absolutely not true. At least in the last away cycle, is not true. Somebody shared it on Twitter as well, that his away record as a spinner has been better than the home spinners of their respective countries. 5-wicket haul is not the only way to judge, right? His function, his role, for instance, in Adelaide, he bowled almost 50 overs of immense control. And he also took wickets, I think 3 and 3 in both innings. They matter a lot. So there's that. And there's that stupid throwaway line from Shastri in an interview where he said Kuldeep will start as the first choice spinner. So that would have been a clear sign that there's some sort of a prejudice against him if they played Kuldeep ahead of him. But so long as they were playing Jadeja, it was always going to be a marginal call. And all this while Jadeja, it was probably unfair that Jadeja was missing out to Ashwin as well, because he has an equally impressive record as a bowler and he's improving as a batsman constantly. I think one of the really surprising things for me was the fact that they absolutely didn't consider Ashwin's track record against West Indies and in West Indies. And that should have tipped, some of the scales in his favor. But eventually, it's really a marginal call between them. So I'm okay with that, so long as this doesn't have a follow-on effect where they play 2 spinners at home and they don't play Ashwin. Then I wouldn't be able to make sense of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I think one of the factors we shouldn't forget is that with this bowling attack, with this 3 fast bowlers that India pick, who is the spinner who is who is a better option in terms of complementing them? So one of the big reasons for picking Jadeja is that, it's not so much for the fact that he can run through sides, which he can, but also because of the fact that he can just keep it at one line and length. He can relieve the fast bowlers of can give them some rest time. And he's fit. He's probably one of the fittest guys, right? And Ashwin's fitness, I think, over the last two series could have also worked against him because he wasn't able to last both the England as well as the Australia series. And people have spoken about it. I mean, the team management, I think Shastri even touched upon that in that interview. But that could have worked against him. And so objectively, I think I agree with Mahesh. I think it was a very close decision. You could say that 2 test series, you would expect Ashwin to last. I mean, given that England and Australia were longer series. But, if the captain feels that it is Jadeja who's giving him that extra few options, both in terms of the bat, which he's been really good with, and in terms of the manner in which he bowls and what the team wants from him, then fair enough. I mean, and it'll be very, very interesting to see the spinners they pick for the first test against South Africa. I mean, that should probably tell us a bit about what they would do going forward.
I'm very excited to talk about Indian bowling. We were talking about Bumrah, Ishant and Shami. A little bit more about Ishant as well, right? Like he's now become like a solid, dependable number 2 bowler to your strike bowler. Like he can hold, he can even strike. So,
what do you mean now become? He's been that for the last 3 years.
He's been doing that for at least 3 years,
yeah.
Yeah, that is just now in his career. He's played 91 tests. I mean, this is just a span of 25 tests that he's like this, or 20 tests. The first 71 tests, we were all crying, right? Whenever Ishant was... Forget us, we were just watching it. I mean, Dhoni was crying behind the stumps, right?
No, Ishant had 3 phases actually. The first phase was super impressive. While, I know the Australian series is a bit of a myth because he bowled one great spell, but otherwise he didn't have a great series. But he didn't have a
five for in India. He had a
he did have a great series against Australia in India where he got 16 wickets in a series and he was the man of the series, if I'm not wrong. So he had a great start. So that was the first phase. And then he had this elaborate phase of absolute mediocrity. And then this resurgence, which has been super impressive. And what this also makes me kind of go back and think about all these aggregate records. Like you look at his aggregate record, his average is over 30. That's hardly impressive. I think he averages less than 3 wickets per match. That's hardly impressive. Or I don't remember what the average wickets per match is, but it's not particularly impressive. And it's very easy to look at the aggregate number and say he's a mediocre bowler. But, if you don't appreciate the fact that he's had this remarkable resurgence, then what's the point of watching cricket? So, like now I'm thinking that I shouldn't be harsh on all these records. For instance, the other day, somebody shared the record of batsmen at the end of 60 odd tests, whatever Steven Smith is now at.
67.
67. And it's a very familiar list, except that there is Thilan Samaravira there. And it is highly unfair that he doesn't even get talked about. And he scored some phenomenal hundreds in Asia. While he may not have set the world on fire elsewhere, and also it's very likely that he didn't get a fair chance to set the world on fire elsewhere because he'd have probably played 1-2 test series in South Africa and Australia or whatever. But in Asia, he's made some phenomenal hundreds. And he was averaging over 50 for such a long time. And we rarely talk about it. So I'm just saying that, that Ishant is a classic case of appreciating players for their, peak performance and sustained peak performance rather than just aggregate records.
And what about Ishant, those cotton bowls? Those were really good catches that he was taking off that follow through, right? And also his batting. He's become like an overall package now.
The batting was a total surprise, right? Absolute surprise. He's always been a dependable defender. And that also tapered off a little bit. But for him to come out and play those shots was just... I could not even imagine them.
Dude, he had an overseas 50. Last time when he was in England, he had a 50. At that time, I was thinking, how bad was that bowling attack? Turns out that might not have been that bad at all, because he came here and did the same thing again.
I mean, the cover drives that he was hitting in this test, I mean, that was like a top 5 batsman, man. He was just screaming them.
Thinking about this Ishant resurgence, and I was trying to kind of make sense of it, arguing to myself that maybe this phase of last 3 odd years has been so impressive because of the support he gets. Then I thought, Bumrah is barely a year old. And Shami has been, a hot and cold bowler for a while. Only now he's quite consistent. So in many ways, this resurgence of Indian fast bowling has been spearheaded by him, rather than him benefiting from others raising their stakes.
Yeah, and I think by the time he ends his career, whenever it is, he may have had better stats than Zahir Khan. That is, I think, will be a surety. Because now he averages around 33. Zahir averages around 32 or 31. I think Ishant will bring it down a couple of points.
Yeah, Zahir averages 32. If Ishant continues, he'll bring it down a couple of points. And Zahir has 311 wickets. And Ishant has 278. And he can easily go past Zahir. It's just a matter of 3 good series and he'll go past Zahir. Now, that ball to Holder that Bumrah bowled in Antigua, that was just absolutely breathtaking. I mean, I had to watch it like 3-4 times to actually believe that he had bowled such a ball. And of course, I've seen great balls from Bumrah, but that ball was just somehow, it seemed like the best ball he had bowled at that time. Maybe it's not, but I still think
it is the best ball he's bowled in his career. I don't think Holder could have played that on a replay.
I don't think anyone could have played it. That's the thing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Steve Smith in his in this form can play it, but I can see that ball getting Sachin out or Lara out. That was the kind of ball that it was. I mean, I remember that famous ball that Wakar bowled to Lara, that Yorker.
Yeah. Sharjah.
Was it Sharjah or was it in Pakistan? I think
Sharjah.
Which basically topples over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lara falls over, yeah.
Yeah, Lara just loses his balance and falls over. I mean, that's like a bowler's ultimate sort of victory, right? I mean, not only have you beaten him and bowled him, you've even made him lose his balance. And that's the kind of stuff that this guy was doing. I mean, the batsman is just clueless, man. There's no way you can play that. And of course, you have to talk about the action. And Viv Richards spoke about it on air. He said that when a bowler is bowling with that action, the first instinct is that your ball is just going to come at you and you're trying for self-preservation, and then it goes away. What do you do?
Talking of a legend's take on that, there was another legend. Rohit Sharma actually talks to him in that BCCI reporter thing, right? They have that.
Die. What is this legend you're speaking of?
Anyway, you can edit that out. Okay, so Rohit.
No, I'm keeping this in.
So Rohit actually brings this point up with him in that reporter thing where he says, usually you don't bowl the outswinger. So what made you think about bowling the outswinger and how did you master it? Funnily, he actually says that I did bowl that in England. So in the sense, it's just that right now we're surprised by the extent of his mastery rather than his just ability to bowl outswinger. And so he's been working on it for a while. It's just that with the breeze, with the conditions, with the ball, everything, it just worked out perfectly on this occasion. I mean, I was surprised that he actually gave that response. I thought, I've been trying for it. Usually I bowl the one that holds its line. It doesn't swing too much. I mean, that's fair, right? I mean, when Rohit asked that question, it's also fair. That was the general perception that he doesn't bowl the outswingers too much and as well. But in his mind, he's been working that out since England. And everything fell in place here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's bowled it before. I just said, I just feel that, at least in terms of the wickets, I haven't seen it. I'm sure he's tried it and he's worked on it. And that's the thing with him, right? He's constantly refining and fine-tuning things. It's not just like he picks up the ball one day and says, let me do it. He's obviously has a plan for exactly what he's working on, and then over time he's building it. And the most staggering part of all this is he's yet to play a test at home. So, and that is what is making me even more excited, because I think, for all this cliche around India being, a spinner's paradise and all that, I think Bumrah at home will be a devastating force. And I just can't wait to watch him bowl in a test at home, especially on day 3 and 4, when, things get, the pitch goes a little up and down, and and even if there's a bit of reverse coming in or something, I mean, he's just going to be deadly.
Can't wait. Imagine Bumrah, Shami, Ashwin and Jadeja. God save you.
Well, you're saying Shami over Ishant?
No, Shami at home is lethal, boss. There's no doubt. If you're playing only four bowlers, Shami at home will play.
Assuming that he's there's no issue with that legal issue that he's that he's in fighting at the moment.
Correct. Now let's go to the sad part of the series, the West Indies batting.
Well, which finished before we could even talk about it, you mean?
Yeah. I think we should also keep it short and honor that memory. And I mean, I had at least some expectation that they will bat slow and they'll try to frustrate the Indian bowlers, especially Craig Brathwaite. Forget John Campbell, Craig Brathwaite and Shea Hope. I had kind of aspirations that they will at least deliver 50s or some respectable scores and hold India off and for at least 60, 70 overs. It didn't happen. That was the most disappointing thing for me. Maybe we'll come to Hetmeyer later on, but I think West Indies felt a great void in these two guys not stepping up.
Except for that 2 big innings, Hope has never really taken off. Even in the India series, he had great starts. He was playing beautifully, but he just couldn't kind of build on that innings. So it's been a recurring problem, and he's had a fairly decent sort of career length so far. Of course, because it's West Indies and because there's such a dearth of batting talent, Shea Hope will keep getting played in the 11. And given that you're playing him in the 11, although he was wicket-keeping as well, I was very surprised that they pushed him down to number 6 as well. I mean, he's the top order batsman. You have to play him in the top order. There are no two ways of looking at it. Either you play him or you don't. But if you play him, you have to play him in the top order.
And one thing about this, West Indies, I think I'm really surprised that they chose to go with him keeping in the... Didn't he keep in the first test?
Yeah, he did. But apparently that was because this guy was injured.
Okay, so they were forced to do it, but I think that could play a part as well, because especially when you spend long hours on the field keeping, I mean, some keepers can do it. Some of them can come out and bat and keep for 2 days and all that. But maybe there's something to look into that. And I think that Dowrich, I mean, of course we spoke about Alzari Joseph, but I think Shane Dowrich was a big miss for West Indies, because he's been terrific with the bat for them in the last 2 years. He's averaged close to 40 in 2 years. And for a keeper in this kind of bowler-dominated era, is quite sensational numbers. So I think Shane Dowrich was a big miss, especially, when your top order collapses. West Indies often rely on Chase, Holder and Dowrich at the lower order, and, Dowrich wasn't there. So they couldn't really do it. The other big disappointment for me was Darren Bravo. I mean, I thought that, Bravo is often the guy, apart from Brathwaite, but Bravo and Brathwaite are often the two solid presences there. They usually hang around for 2-3 hours, and then other people can score around them. So, but neither really got going. I mean, Hetmeyer is a huge disappointment. I think he probably is going to lose his spot after this series, his test spot. And, I really I can't say what is wrong, but I could feel the exasperation on Ian Bishop and Vivian Richards and all those guys in the commentary who just couldn't understand some of the decisions he was making when batting. And I think Hetmeyer, he probably needs some time off at the lower levels to work on his game and get back. Phenomenal talent, obviously. And especially in the short forms, but it takes.
I think it is also it's a variation of the KL Rahul problem, right? Like he hasn't quite figured out the rhythm at which he wants to go in Test cricket. Of course, in an ODI and or a T20, he can start bashing it from the
No,
first
I don't
one.
think that. See, KL Rahul is slightly tricky because KL Rahul is a phenomenal first-class batsman and he had a good start to his Test career. For him, it's a matter of losing sort of touch of how to bat in this format. But Hitmyer has never been like his first-class record is not particularly impressive. In his Test match career so far, he's never shown the inclination to actually grind through tough periods of time. Even when he played in India, he had a couple of impressive starts, but he was just going for his shots all the time. So my point is, why should we define this as talent? This is not talent for Test cricket. Right? If it's just a matter of him hitting a few attractive boundaries, like like when Flintoff didn't quite make it as an all-rounder and he was a bowler with some odd batting exploits, Boycott used to call him a boundary hitter, a four-ball hitter. So we should not, even with Rahul, sometimes this phenomenal talent gets used often. He might be a phenomenal talent in T20, but he's not a phenomenal talent in Test cricket. Talent in Test cricket has a very clear definition. It's not about the ability to hit boundaries, and Hitmyer is just not talented enough.
But one thing is for sure, we should reiterate that West Indies were perhaps not as bad as they looked. I think the Indian bowling
they were made to look.
They were made to look. I think when I really doubt if any other team is going to go to West Indies and blow them away the way India did. I can see West Indies in the next series. I'm not sure when they play the next series at home, but I can see them competing, if not winning that series, and not really struggling as much as they did now. So let's give credit to the bowling as well once again.
Speaking of bowling, the West Indies bowling. Holder was great. Gabriel wasn't, but I thought Roach had consistently outstanding spells with very, very little luck. He could have as well ended up with a fifer or a couple of fifers. I thought he's and KK also wrote about him also, right? Like in an probably more fortunate series, he would have ended up with 15 wickets in this series. I thought he was the outstanding bowler. Holder, of course, he's always been outstanding, but I thought Roach is the real spearhead and has always been in the last 2-3 years for the West Indies.
He's so consistent, right? He hits the corridor all the time, and it's just a matter of jagging it a little away and a little in. And he's at the peak of his craftsmanship at the moment, and it shows. See, early on in his career, he was probably a lot faster, a lot more lethal. But now he's got such a great understanding of his craft, and it shows in the way he operates. It's just such a delight to watch him operate. Even though he didn't probably get as many wickets as he should have, but it was still a lot of fun watching him bowl. I wish he had better support, but I hope he goes on to have 250 wickets or something and gets into that pantheon of great West Indian fast bowlers because he deserves it.
Well, the one thing with Roach, though, is that I think he's absolutely brilliant in West Indies and tends to be not as great when he goes abroad. So often what happens is that because a lot of people end up missing series in West Indies and not really keeping track. And then when he goes to England, when he's gone to England or Australia or other countries, he's not as effective or as brilliant. So I guess the impression of him tends to get warped a bit. But in West Indies, I'm just looking at the record here. In West Indies, in 30 tests, he averages 22. Which is like elite fast bowling. And then in 25 tests away, he averages 37, which is, nothing great. So, I think that...
No, also he had a long career. For instance, at the beginning of his career, when he first went to Australia, when he was quite impressive, it's like that Ishant spell, right? While you remember the highlights, his overall aggregate numbers would have been bad because the team was bad. He hardly had any support.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm not. I'm sure there are various reasons for that. No doubt about it. And I won't be surprised if that home average has been considerably improved over the last 3 years, when West Indies have become a force to reckon with, at least in home conditions. So yes, sure, absolutely. And I think he's also, now they're using him differently. I mean, earlier he used to. Uh, because Gabriel can bowl the long spells, and because Holder can, hold the one end up with his economy and wicket taking, then Roach has this luxury to bowl the brief bursts and really uh, try and get the breakthroughs. So I think that has helped as well. I mean, it didn't really help him when he had to bowl 7, 8 overs on the trot and then come back and do the same thing. I think he's much better utilized in this way, especially as he gets on with his age.
One thing that doesn't get spoken about much, but that I noticed was our slip catching is not that great. We did catch a lot, and since our bowlers kept producing so many chances, and there were a lot of LBWs and bowls, that didn't get talked a lot. But I think we dropped a fair few this series, dude. And again, this whole thing of revolving slip policy. Only Ajinkya Rahane I see as a mainstay there. But this Pujara, Kohli, they keep swapping them from first slip to second slip to third slip as per convenience. That is something I think in tests where wickets will be hard to come by, and or conditions are not that favorable, this kind of slip catches are going to hurt us, no?
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's also like we saw in England and Australia. The other problem is that the distance, they keep changing the distances between them. It's like almost they have no, it's like suddenly they decide, okay, I have to stand 1 feet wider. I have to stand 1 feet, and Pant plays a big role in that, right? I mean, he's been with the team long enough to now have the sort of understanding to adjust that slip cordon and to know how much further to act. And I'm sure they have, with all the fielding analysis that they do, they clearly know that which batsmen need where you have to stand based on the pitches and based on the bowlers, the distance you have to stand from the wicket and all that. And there seems to be an issue there as well in terms of gauging where to stand. Of course, the catching ability is a concern, definitely. Apart from Rahane and I think Rahul, who can be a safe catcher, but who has his off days. Rahane,
Correct.
who's I think generally safe, but Kohli doesn't give me much confidence in that slip cordon.
Kohli has hard hand.
Yeah, I feel he drops one every 3 chances Kohli can drop. So, and
Yeah,
Pujara, I'm not sure again. Pujara is a bit hit and miss there.
dude, I saw Pujara. I saw edge going. I don't remember the batsman, but there was an edge going between Pujara and the keeper, and Pujara is reacting to it after the ball has gone. Halfway to the boundary.
Yeah, I remember this. Even I forgot the batsman because so many were edging. But I remember this particular case, and I remember like multiple times thinking, why are these guys? Are they standing too wide apart, or are they not calling? What is? I mean, are they not like planning who goes for which catch? Because usually the keeper goes for the catch with the stronger hand, but sometimes the slip fielder says that I'll go for those touch and go ones. But all this needs to be practiced and planned. You can't just do it at the spur of the moment in the middle there.
Correct.
But this
And
slip rotation has been going on for a decade now. So it's become an Indian culture, I think. So Duncan Fletcher was given like a lot of shit for this. But it's been going on since then. I think 2011 England series, we had this problem. I think 2011 Australia also, we had this problem. So it's, I don't know, despite the lack of sustained success, I say this as someone who kind of buys into KD's idea that creating chances more for winning than taking the chances. Of course, that's a very valid foundational principle. But this still matters at the margins. And when you are competing with equally, skilled teams, this could, prove to be a massive difference. But I'm struggling to understand why they would stick to this rotation policy, although it's not yielded success. I'm okay with them not yielding success for whatever reason, but why would you stick to it for so long?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of long interviews with India's fielding coach before the World Cup. I really wish that we see an interview with him about the test team as well, because I think there's a lot to ask him about the test team fielding, starting with the slip cordon, but there are other aspects to it as well. So I'd love to have somebody go and talk to him about this and what is the rationale behind this constant changing and a slip cordon is like a batting lineup, right? You want it settled. You want the fielders also start feeling confident in their positions. You don't want suddenly first slipper standing in third slip and the ball coming at him at an angle that he's not as used to. It's a little weird.
With the amount of chances that Indian bowlers are creating, they might not feel the pinch for a while. But I mean, I'm just talking from past bad scars. That's all I'm talking about. I mean, this should not take anything away from the series win.
I mean, this is also another new territory, right? Because generally speaking, when you see a dropped catch go, the first thought used to be that, oh no, I mean, there goes like a batsman's going to make a 50 or 100. But with this bowling attack, you see a dropped catch and you're not as disheartened. You're like, okay, next one chance will come next. And that is also new territory for many of us who have been watching since the 90s, right? So 80s, 90s.
All right. That brings us to the end of this podcast. Let us know what you thought of it. Leave us a reply at our Twitter handle 81allout. You can find our pod on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and other major platforms. Do leave us a rating on iTunes, and also check out our sister pod, The Other Banana, where we discuss regional movies. Till we meet again, this is Ashoka signing off. Bye.
Srijan takes it. India win. He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India home. Lords goes wide.